2025 brings about new tax rules and regulations, and it may be time to rethink your entity. Should you remain an LLC? Should you become an S-Corp? Or should you go back and actually no longer be an S-Corp and become an LLC? In this video, I am going to break down the pros and cons of being an LLC versus an S-Corp and what you need to consider. But before we jump in, you already know what to do. I'm gonna need you to like, comment, and subscribe. We are not missing out on any wealth building information in 2025. Now, let's get after it. LLCs are typically a simpler form of business. Most people, when they're starting out, they form an LLC as a single member. Why? Because that LLC is easy to form, less paperwork. Yes, you still have to file with your Secretary of State in the state where you are doing business. But for the most part, you're going to file income taxes within the same 1040 form that you're going to use to file your individual taxes. So LLCs become a lot more appealing, and they do give you that limited liability based on you doing the right thing as an LLC owner. S-Corps, on the other hand, bring about a bit more complexity. S-Corps require you to file with the Secretary of State as well, but when it comes time to do a tax filing, S-Corps require you to file a separate income tax form called an 1120S. And when you are an S-Corporation, you actually have to make sure you are staying in compliance, because now you have that word corporation behind what you are filing. And so IRS is going to require you to have more compliance and do more as an S corporation. When we think about 2025 tax changes, there are going to be 2025 tax changes for S Corp owners. Why do I say that? Because as an S Corp owner, you have to put yourself on payroll. Now, you might be thinking, oh, Karla, I don't have to go on payroll. I can just write myself a check and take distributions. You might be able to get away with that year one, but I am going to tell you that one of the requirements of being an S Corp owner is making sure you give yourself reasonable compensation. And that requires you to actually put yourself on payroll as an employee of the business. That means that you're going to have to file payroll tax returns quarterly. And in addition, you're going to have to issue yourself a W-2 as if you work for an employer. And there's likely going to be payroll tax changes because there are changes every single year. And the payroll tax changes typically come through the Employment Development Department of your state and on the IRS side as well. So you typically have two agencies that you have to work with, depending on if you're in a taxable state. However, LLC owners are going to have some additional compliance as well. The Transparency Act required LLC owners to file the BOI reporting. Now, right now, that reporting is suspended. However, it may go back into effect at any given moment. That is going to require you to have more compliance. That is going to require you, the LLC owner, to keep up with who you are allowing to be members within your LLC. You're going to need to get their names, their phone numbers, their social security numbers. You're going to need to get some reporting information on these individuals and keep up with their addresses. It's no longer going to be, oh, my partner John gave me $20,000, $5,000, and I don't have any information on John. I just have his money. No, you're going to have to be a little bit more of a police, if you will, and keep track of exactly John's identifying information. So there's absolutely going to be changes for the S-Corp owner and the LLC owner in 2025. When you are dealing with an S-Corp and when you are dealing with an LLC, the compliance is different. When you start these businesses, our revenue departments and the IRS expects us to govern these businesses. And what does governance look like? When you are operating as an S-Corp, governance looks like filing your appropriate statement of information every single year, making sure that if you're in a taxable state that has minimum tax, that you're paying that minimum tax every single year, making certain that you file the tax return every single year. And if you're done with the entity, that you actually dissolve it. You don't just throw it away. You don't just stop operating it. You have to actually dissolve the entity the same way you created it by filing dissolution paperwork with your Secretary of State. And once you level up and become an S-Corp owner or file as an S-Corp, you have a higher level of responsibility. The best analogy I can give you is you decide to go out and have a child. You now have a higher level of responsibility. It's no longer just you, the individual. You are now responsible for you and your kid. IRS holds you to that same standard. You're now responsible for your individual tax filings and your corporate tax filings as an S-Corp owner. On the LLC side of the equation, you also have compliance requirements. Typically, a revenue department requires you to register every 2 years a statement of information, depending on what state you're operating in. So you, as the individual owner, the member needs to make sure you know what the compliance is in your state. Additionally, you got to have adequate books and records for both. And adequate books and records require you to have a financial statement and a balance sheet, a checking account for your business. There's no more commingling funds, putting your business receipts in the same account as your personal receipts. There's no more paying your personal expenses out of your business account. You chose to set up that LLC and you chose to set up that S-Corp. So you got to level up your knowledge, because upon audit, if they disallow anything, IRS will also hit you with penalties and interest. And penalties can be late filing penalties, underpayment penalties, civil penalties, and fraud penalties. So you don't want to get yourself into that particular scenario. So make certain you understand your administrative burden of owning these corporations, LLCs, and S-Corps beyond just making money. There's a lot more that goes into it. Changing from an LLC to being taxed as an S-Corp, I want to make sure that you understand that when you make that change, you're not changing the type of entity that you are with your Secretary of State. You are still an LLC for legality purposes. However, you are just going to be taxed as an S corporation, requiring you to file Form 2553, notifying IRS that you want to change the taxability of your entity. You may be thinking to yourself, well, Karla, why would I want to do that? There are several reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is that many individuals want to file a separate tax return to really separate the business. In addition, they want to mitigate the self-employment tax, because when you are an LLC, you are going to pay self-employment tax, that 15.3% Social Security and Medicare tax on your profit. You don't pay that self-employment tax when you are an S-Corp. However, you have to put yourself on payroll when you are an S-Corp owner. You have to go on payroll for adequate and reasonable wages. That's why it's so important to understand the overall compliance of operating these entities. 2025 is going to bring about changes, but now you guys know what you need to do. You got to be looking out for payroll tax changes. You got to be looking out for the changes based on the BOI requirements. You got to be looking out for tax changes. Am I going to get my 20% flow through deduction? There's always going to be changes. That's why it's so imperative that you as a LLC owner, you as an S-Corp owner, making sure you take time out every quarter to do your due diligence on what you need to be doing as a business owner, and making sure you're working with the tax strategist that can keep you up to date on all things tax as it pertains to your LLC, your S-Corps, and your payroll taxes. Because the worst thing that can happen, and I've seen it several times, is that my LLC owners and my S-Corp owners will come to me getting their taxes done, and they're so proud of what they've done, except for I have to tell them how much they owe in tax. Then all of their profit that they've spent already is gone, and now their feelings are hurt. No tears in my office, so make certain you follow what I've laid out for you. And now that you know better, do better. Like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you share this video with a friend, because friends don't let friends overpay tax.